Monday, March 26th. I'm Rim.
I'm Scott.
And this is Geeknights. Tonight we talk in layman's terms a bit about encryption.
Let's do this. So all the grocery stores near our house kinda suck.
Well, relative to all the places we've lived before in our lives, this area, mostly it's just that they're not open 24/7, which is this alien concept to me.
That, and they also are far away from our house. Like, usually a grocery store should be able to get to in, like, less than 5 minutes. No, they're all kind of, like, almost 10 minutes away. It's kind of annoying.
Well, you realize it took us about 10 or 15 minutes to get to the Wegmans from our house in Colony.
Well, I took the secret back way. It took a lot less time.
It still took 10 minutes.
Yeah. Anyway, the other thing is a lot of the grocery stores don't have all the products I want. It's like,
you have very specific picky taste in certain things. You want this specific kind of bread and this specific kind of tomato sauce.
Well, what's wrong with that? I mean, like, you want specific. I want Coca-Cola regular. I mean, it's a specific product, you know?
But I wonder some of the things you're picky about, if in a double blind you could tell.
I could tell.
I don't know.
Anyway, it's like, I want this brand of bread and I want, this brand of tomato sauce, and they don't have it there. It's kind of annoying. But we have to go there because there isn't a better grocery store. Well, there are, but they're not close enough for it to be worth it to go to a different store.
But we'll skip all that because you guys don't care about our grocery problems.
Right.
But we were in the grocery store today dealing with the fact that we played D&D over the weekend and the Visigoths devoured every piece of food in our house.
Yes, so we were in this grocery store. It's a ShopRite, and they slightly redeemed themselves. We're walking down the aisle, and what do I see? Something that cannot possibly escape my eye. Koala's March.
Now, for those of you who are uninitiated into the cult of the koala, in Japan, there's a little candy. And it's not really a candy.
It's kind of sort of a snack.
It's basically, to put it in no uncertain terms, the cheapest cookie matter known to man puffed into a hollow thing. And inside of that is the cheapest chocolate the world has ever seen, kind of puff injected in there with a machine.
And then they draw a picture of a koala on the outside of the cookie.
Now, there are many, many different koalas that they can draw. In fact, at Katsukan, we found the graph chart of every single koala that exists. And
let's see. We got the koala with the boombox, the koala with the triangle, the koala with the marmalade, I guess, the koala with the guitar, the koala driving a car, the koala playing the drum. You get the idea. There's a whole bunch of koalas, and they all do different things.
My favorite one is a Japanese construction koala.
Ooh, that's a good one. Well, there are 3 different flavors of koala.
Well, no, there are 2 flavors. Ass, not ass.
Yes. Well, we've had the regular old koala, which is a vanilla cookie with chocolate inside. That is a good koala, the not ass koala.
Now, good, it's weird how the bad that all this is, the cheapest components, the absolute cheapest manufacturing thing, the stickiest shtick, and yet somehow it comes together into this delicious snack that has been a very big part of our lives from the moment we first ate one when we were at RIT.
Yep. Well, there's also the strawberry koala, which is ass.
The strawberry koala, you see, I like the normal koala. So when I knew that there was a strawberry koala, we saw one, we bought a box.
Because I like strawberry. I like koalas. This is going to
be great. How could they do this wrong? I mean, how could this possibly... It tasted not so much like strawberry, but like some sort of cleaning fluid.
It's really bad. Anyway, and it wasn't a bad batch either, because I tried them again somewhere else with a different batch, and it was still bad.
It tastes like chemicals.
It tastes bad. Anyway, at the store, we basically bought every box. They were selling them for $1 per box, and a box is pretty much just one serving of koalas. We bought every box of plain koalas they had for $1 each. And they saw the 3rd flavor was available, in addition to the strawberry, which we bought none of. The white chocolate cream koala, which is a chocolate cookie with white chocolate inside. Now, I have never had this koala, and I have them right here. We bought 1 package of white chocolate cream koala, and I'm going to eat one right now.
Now, I wouldn't buy it. I mean, we saw the normal koalas, and it was pretty much Scott goes, oh, craps, and he grabs as many as he can grab in one fistful. And I look, and I see that there are 3 remaining, so I grabbed all of them. We basically cleaned the place out of koalas immediately. They're probably going to be like, we got these koala things, and someone bought them all. Because they must have gotten them right away, but I'm leery of this non-normal koala.
Well, judging from the smell and the look, I'm going 50-50 on what it is going to be good or bad.
So it's supposed to be white chocolate in there. I wonder if it's actually white chocolate.
I'll read the ingredients after I eat it. You ready? All right. It's okay. I mean, it's not poisonous. And it seems like it's got this hint that there's a good flavor somewhere, but it never actually reaches that good flavor. It's just the preamble. Like, there's a good flavor coming. There's a good flavor coming. It never comes. And then there's kind of an aftertaste. So, stick to the normal koalas, people.
I guess I was correct in my assessment, and I'm glad that I did not waste the $1 that you have now wasted.
Do you want one?
No.
It's all right.
I'll try it eventually, but I don't want one now.
All right. So,
Scott's going to stop eating koalas so we don't hear smack, 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 gargle all the time.
yeah, I only ate one just
Yeah.
to see what it was like.
Granted, while Scott was doing that, I basically ate an entire little box of koalas in that span.
Well, I think every box has, hold on, it says on here, every box of koalas has 14 cookies, which is 2 servings. All right, that's cool. Oh, let's see, white chocolate cream is the number 1 ingredient.
Huh.
It's partially hydrogenated palm and soy. Wow, there's 2.5 grams of trans fat in this koala.
I just ate a bunch of trans fat. That's not cool.
There's 5 grams of trans fat in this entire koala package.
That's a lot. Huh.
Maybe I have to go sparingly on the koalas.
We
from
finally
now on.
learned about this trans fat business, and now that knowledge, it's like Cthulhu. There was something that we enjoyed, and just now we came upon some dark, hideous knowledge about that thing, and now we look at it in a whole new light.
Sigh.
Anyway, I don't have a segue here, but in the news, you might have remembered a while ago that the guy who does Reiser FS, his name is Reiser, if you couldn't guess.
Hans Reiser.
Well, he was arrested for the possible murder of his wife, his estranged wife.
You can read all the facts of the case on the internet or on Wikipedia, and I gotta say, it looks like he probably did it.
I mean,
I can't say for sure, but
this isn't news. This happened a long time ago. I believe we talked about it. The open source community was kind of a buzz. I mean, it's kind of weird for me to see a high-profile tech guy who the name I've only ever associated with tech. When I hear Reiser, I think Reiser FS, the file system I use on my Gen 2 box.
yeah, I mean, this guy, he's a programmer. He made a really good file system. We did an episode on file systems. You can go listen to that. And it's really awesome. And the only thing we ever thought about this guy was he must be a smart guy who makes file systems. That's not the kind of guy you think would murder his wife.
And it's weird to hear him. I mean, when I first saw the news, I thought, wow, some guy named Reiser murdered his wife. That's pretty funny. Too bad it's not the guy who does my file system. Shit.
It is the guy.
Because if he actually goes to jail, Reiser FS, there's some dubious states as to what's going to happen to it.
I mean, it's kind of weird. It's like, you look at all the different groups of people, you know, in terms of what, you know, like general groups of people, you know?
You know?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. You look at, like, athletes, some athletes are criminals, some aren't.
O.J. Simpson. O.J.
Politicians, some politicians are criminals, some aren't.
All of them.
Businessmen, some of them are criminals, some aren't, you know? It seems like the percentages are pretty average relative to the general population. When it comes to scientists and technology people, you don't see too many criminals.
I believe you were discounting the very wide evil scientist demographic.
Ah, yes, the evil scientist demographic.
I mean, they're the ones who secretly made AIDS in the 1970s to kill minorities. Or not. But anyway, the actual news here is that he pleaded not guilty. And all the people analyzing the case...
He pled not guilty.
Regardless, the people around the case aren't sure what to make of this, because it's very odd, apparently, for a defendant to waive their right. Well, basically, you get a right to have a trial within 60 days in that state. And yet he's waiving his right, or he's not waiving his right. So he'll have the trial almost immediately. So the prosecution's scrambling to get all their stuff together.
Huh.
Usually, they basically wait and let all the evidence be gathered and then have the trial. And this guy's gunning, yeah, let's just get this over with. I didn't do it.
Maybe there's some evidence that they haven't got, and he doesn't think they'll get it in the 60 days.
Well, they haven't found his wife's body yet.
Ah, it's a smart move, being a murderer. If he did it, it's a smart move. That's all I could say.
You know what? If he didn't do it, it's a smart move too, probably.
Maybe.
I think all things told, it probably makes it more likely that he'll get off, regardless of whether he did it.
Yeah, there's a reason you have a right to a speedy trial. You know, if I needed a trial for me, I would definitely make it as speedy as possible. I'm not going to be waiving any rights unless there was a reason to. Like, I really didn't do it, and
Well,
they're gonna collect an evidence that proves I didn't.
I can foresee situations, Scott, where you would very readily waive your rights.
Like,
For example, suppose that we amended the Constitution and you now had a right to sodomy.
you know what I'm saying.
Are you saying that you wouldn't waive that right?
I wouldn't waive the rights I've got already for real.
Adebisi standing there.
All right, what's with you and the stupid Adebisi?
He has a funny hat.
Anyway, so Apple, that Apple TV thing. Remember when they came out with the iPhone and they talked about the Apple TV? You can get the Apple TV now.
I'm not even sure what Apple TV is.
That's all I'm going to tell you right now. Apple TV is a little box. It's like a Mac Mini, only flat. And you plug it into your TV. And you plug it into the electricity in the holes in the wall. You know the holes? The holes? Yeah.
The holes, Jerry.
Right. And you also plug it into your audio with an optical cable or an RCA or whatever you've got.
Do I plug it into the internet?
It plugs in to the internets with the wirelesses. But not really the internets so much as the other Macs nearby on the same network. And what you do is it has a hard drive, and you send things to it. You sync with it, kind of like you sync with an iPod. It's actually pretty slick the way you sync with it, right? So you go on iTunes, you buy some videos, you sync with your Apple TV. You get some M4A, MPEG-4 videos. They got to be in, like, the right format.
Oh, well, that pretty much makes it useless. Welcome to the internet.
Yes. And you sync it, and you put stuff on there. And then, using the slick interface of the Apple TV, you can watch them in possibly HD on your TV, which is the advantage over just plugging a computer into your TV, because most computers can't output HD to your television without special stuff. And the Apple TV does it with a slick interface that looks pretty nice.
So that's it?
That's pretty much it. I mean, it has 802.11n, so you can transfer stuff to it real fast.
If you have an 802.11n thing.
I mean, if you have an Apple TV, you better be an Apple person with an HD TV and such and such. However, there's been a lot of hacksawing of it going on, of course, and people have gotten it to play Xvids, and they've gotten it to do all this stuff. But at the same time, people are saying, hey, here's how to use Front Row to turn your Mac into an Apple TV. So
Yeah.
It's like, I don't know. I think that this device has uses, but the number of people who would actually get a benefit from it is very small. Like, you have to be a specific kind of person. Like, you better be a Mac user who buys a lot of videos on iTunes and has an HD TV, and your computer is nowhere near your TV.
And you have a bunch of Macs, or at least one Mac.
And that, yeah, if your primary computers are all Macs, then in that situation, this would be a good thing for you to buy, possibly.
Well, how much is this thing supposed to cost anyway?
It's a good question. I didn't actually look that up. Let's go to apple.com.
Because I'd wonder, if it cost anywhere near the cost of a Mac Mini, I'd just get a Mac Mini.
Well, the Mac Mini can't output HD. That's your problem.
Oh, no.
That's what I said. If you have an HD TV.
Yeah, but even now, currently, while there is HD content on the internet, the vast majority of the content that, I guess, normal geeks watch on the internet is not HD. It is, in fact, YouTube quality or possibly anime fan sub quality.
Well, the Apple TV comes with the Apple TV. It has a 40 gigabyte hard drive.
That's it?
Yep. It doesn't need that much because it only stores what you're going to watch, and you store most of the stuff on your Mac. And then you send it over, watch it, and then you don't, It's sort of like your iPod. It doesn't need a really big hard drive because you store the music on your PC and you sync what you're going to listen to. It's $300, which is, like, okay, I guess. I mean, for an HD video card, probably costs $300.
Yeah, it's about half the cost of the lowest end Mac Mini, so I can see a market for it at least.
Yeah, only because the price is low enough. That's the only reason anyone should even consider buying it. And only if you're HD, buying videos on iTunes, and big-time Mac user. Other than that, I think this is a pretty, very niche product.
Things of the day. Now, this thing of the day I got here, this video, is very important. Because if you're out there, you need to be aware that the chicken police are ready to stop any fights you might get involved in.
Hey, you there with that drumstick. Stop. You're under arrest.
Particularly if you're a rabbit. Emily told us about this, and she knew where it was on YouTube, and she pointed us at it, and she wouldn't say anything other than that it's chicken police. So we watched it, and sure enough, it is in fact chicken police.
It's a video of two rabbits, and Emily is rabbit crazy, so that's why she knows if it's on the internet and there's rabbits, she knows about it.
Yeah, I mean, when I'm bored at work or whenever I'm bored on the internet, I'll just search for videos of puppies. She's the same way, except she'll search for videos of rabbits.
Anyway, so this video has 2 rabbits.
And they're fighting.
They're fighting, like, bitey, bitey, grabby, grabby, scratchy, scratchy.
You know, that jump around rabbit fight. And suddenly, you hear this noise, and these 2 chickens run over. And each one of them takes one rabbit and basically acts exactly like a bouncer at a club or a cop breaking up a fight. And they separate the 2 rabbits, pull them apart, and just stand there staring at him.
It's a funny animal video.
One of the rabbits, like, moves to go back to fighting, and the chicken goes nuts on it, like, you stay right there.
Yeah.
Don't breathe. Don't move.
It's not quite as good as the video where the monkey bothering the tigers, but it's better than that video, that recent video series of, like, the dog and the cat getting along.
Now, what makes this video is that after the chickens stand there for a while, and they stare down the rabbits, and the rabbits seem to agree to stop fighting, the chickens decide that their job is done, and they both just walk away.
Yeah, but, like, as they walk away right before, they're like, yeah,
like,
that's right.
Like, they do that, they give this look like, we'll be back if you 2 cause trouble.
I really don't know what those animals are thinking, but it's pretty funny.
I'll bet those chickens just didn't want those rabbits making noise. I don't know.
All right. So, Rim, I got a question for you.
All right.
How do you prove photography to a blind man?
Well, that's an interesting question. I'll let you describe the answer because this is your thing of the day, even though we already had this conversation a little while ago.
Yes. Well, I read this on an awesome blog that I never read before called Skeptico, Critical Thinking for an Irrational World.
Ooh.
And it's a short blog post, but it is very interesting. Basically, this guy, being a skeptic like us, was arguing with a psychic or a claimed psychic or someone who believed in psychics. And that person said to this guy, how do you prove photography to a blind man? And obviously he was getting at was, how do you prove psychicness to a non-psychic person? If you can't see the psychicness, how can I possibly prove to you that it's there?
Now, while this is a very, well, you know, I wouldn't call it a stupid analogy in retrospect because it's a very good analogy if you look at it from a smart point of view because it proves that this guy's wrong.
Yes.
But at the same time, I give this guy credit for whoever he stole this idea from, because it's not, of all the arguments that people make for psychic powers or for the evils of evidence-based science or whatever craziness they're talking about, that's probably the most well-reasoned argument I've ever heard.
It'll take a smart person to come back against this argument.
Well,
Luckily,
at least to come back on the top of their feet out of the blue.
yes. Well, this guy, of course, is a very smart person. He says, of course you can prove photography to a blind man. It's very simple. You put him in a room, you give him a camera, a Polaroid probably, and you say, all right, blind man, make sure that no one's in the room, lock all the doors, etc., you know, doesn't have any windows. Then take a picture of yourself holding up some number of fingers. Then show that picture to people who can see that you've never met before. Ask them how many fingers you're holding up in that picture. And if they tell you how many fingers you're holding up, then it probably worked. And photography is real. You know, do it a whole bunch of times because they might have just guessed correctly. And if they keep saying the right number of fingers, you can bet that that machine probably took a picture of you and put it onto that piece of paper that you're showing to people. And thus you would know the photography works. Then he goes on to say some fun stuff, making fun of psychics. If you did this 1,000 times, and the sighted person got the correct number of fingers, say 225 times out of 1,000, where pure chance would be 200 times, would the blind man believe that this anomaly was proof of photography? Yeah, it's just funny because psychics are like, yeah, we get it right a better percentage of the time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's perfect, though. What can I say? That guy was smart.
Yep.
Grant, it's not that hard to own a psychic
It's not.
in a rational argument.
Yeah. What if a scientific body spent 25 years researching whether sighted people could guess how many fingers blind people are holding up in front of a camera, but concluded that there is ultimately very little, if any, data that supports the hypothesis that they can? What if a conjurer offered $1 million for any sighted person who could successfully perform the 5-finger test, but no one was able to do it? Yeah. Wouldn't the blind man say to all this, why can't you just tell me how many fingers I'm holding up?
All right.
Yeah.
So anyway, over the weekend, so we were playing D&D, in 2 separate conversations, Scott and I ended up explaining encryption and bits of cryptography to numbers of our friends.
Yeah, Pete explained to me, because there was an article about those man sheep, or Hugh sheep.
Oh, the Chimera sheep thing?
Yeah.
I almost used that as my news.
Yeah. But I wanted him, he's biology, so I got him to decrypt the story for me.
That's a pretty heady claim that Pete is biology. That he encompasses all that biology is.
No, but he's a biologist in a way.
He is biologist. He encompasses. I think you're missing some indefinite articles there.
Anyway. So, and then, I don't know how the conversation got to it, but it got to the encryption. So I explained to him how the private public key encryption works. And I said, hey, we should do a show on that action.
See, I think the way this actually went down was I overheard the tail end of your conversation. I said, did you just explain encryption to Pete? And you said, yes, and he just explained sheep to me.
That's what I said.
So yeah, like all the recent shows we've done about technology, we're going to go about this in a very broad layman's terms. You don't need to know a lot of math or science or computing. We're just going to go over the basics, explain a lot of things very shallowly. We're going for breadth here, not depth.
Yep. All right, so Rim, what's encryption?
Well, you see, back in Roman times, say I'm Julius Caesar, and I got my army, and I'm going to go invade Gaul, and I'm going to go blow up and destroy this one town in Gaul. But I need to get a bunch of army people here and make all my plans, so I got to send letters back to Rome. Now, what if, while I send the letters back, my dude gets ambushed, and someone reads the letters that say, OMG, I'm totally attacking the Gaulish capital, LOL Zors.
Or what if the messenger dude is totally a spy?
Yeah. Or what if the messenger dude isn't a spy, but he's just dumb? And then he tells his wife at night, yeah, we're invading Gaul. And his wife tells her friend, and she tells her lover. And then it gets back to the guy in Gaul who's like, oh, really?
That's not so good.
Well, thus enter the Caesar cipher. Basically, at its barest level, all encryption is a way to either verify or obscure the contents of some sort form of information that you are transporting between 2 people, or even just on yourself, so that no one else can read it, or pretend it's theirs, depending on how you go about it.
Yes, there are many times when you have some information, and you don't want to share the information with the whole world. You only want to share the information with one other person, or a few other people. Now, of course, you could just get in the same room as the person, make sure no one else can hear you, and talk. Or you can sit in a room, write on a piece of paper with no one else looking, and then when you're done, throw it in the fire. And you know that that information will just be between you 2 people. However, sometimes you're far away. Or sometimes you don't want to do it in the same room. Or sometimes you're tired of writing. Or you got to be 100% safe. Or close to 100% safe. And then you need encryptions.
Now, classical old-style encryption worked on generally very simple principles. These are probably the codes that you played with when you were a kid. You take your little note like, oh my God, Susie has cooties. And then say you add 1 to every letter, so A becomes B, and X becomes Y. And now you've got a bunch of gobbledygook.
Z becomes A.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then now, anyone who wants to read your message, because it looks like gibberish, has to know that the key is subtract 1 from every letter, so the B's turn back into A's. You see, you've got 2 kinds of text here now. You've got the plain text and the ciphertext. These are 2 important terms that you really should understand before we can talk about this. Very simply, the plain text is your message, the thing you wrote, the note, the message, whatever it is. The ciphertext is what you get when you apply some form of encryption to the plain text. So you'll turn your plain text into a ciphertext, and then hopefully the person you give it to has the key or the way to turn the ciphertext back into plain text, yet no one else has this ability.
Yes, well, if you do something so simple as adding 1 to every letter, while someone looking at it, with their naked eyeball might go, what the hell? Shit, I don't understand what this says. Crap. And, but if they actually think about it for a minute or play with it, they can figure it out because it's not strong encryption. It's weak-ass encryption. Super weak-ass.
I mean, to give you a few ideas of how this could be broken, there aren't that many combinations of adding or subtracting a number from the alphabet across the... In fact, there's really only 25.
Yeah, it's not too hard.
Now, granted, you could be clever and say, oh, well, skip 2 or skip... But it doesn't matter because you could still brute force it pretty trivially.
Yep.
Just by trying all the combinations. I mean, think, if you've got 25 possible combinations and you try them all, 24 of them are gibberish, and the 25th one is "We attack at dawn." The odds that the attack at dawn one is not right, or the odds that there'll be more than one actual intelligible series of text in there are pretty low.
Pretty much zero.
But there's a lot of other ways you could break this. Statistical analysis. Let's say, that the English language, the letter E is the most used letter. So say someone sends a really long encrypted thing like this. You look at it, and you notice that the letter T occurs more often than any other letter. So then you figure out that T turns into an E, you figure out what transformation that was, and now you're much closer to figuring out what the code is.
Yeah, you can go, those puzzle books they sell in the store that have like crosswords, but they also have logic puzzles and all kinds of other weird things. They have cryptograms in there. Order of the Stick actually did a cryptogram for a while with one of the characters, so you couldn't see what she was saying without figuring it out. And they're pretty easy to solve. A human sitting there for about 10 minutes who's not an idiot can figure it out. It's not very good at all.
Yep. So then things kind of moved along to, obviously aside from that, you could also do substitutions, where instead of just having, +1, -1 an algorithm, you have a code table, like A is actually B, C is actually F, and you make this whole list where you correspond each letter to some other letter, where there's no numerical system to it, there's just a lookup table for it.
Yep.
That's obviously just as easily broken.
Now, there are other types of things you can use. We've been talking about here is ciphers. You can also use a code. Now, in, normal people talk, just layman's terms in the everyday, a code and a cipher are the same damn thing.
Yeah, code, cipher, encryption, secret code, whatever. They're all just
the same. However, a cipher and a code, technically speaking, are very different things.
Now, there's a lot of ways we could explain it and a lot of really geeky analogies.
Yes, but a code is like Rim, the hawk flies at midnight.
Echo, echo, dolphin. The base has landed on the moon. I'm watching anime. Bravo, Victor, and such.
Yeah, see, in the code, you haven't really encrypted, like, the specific bits of the information, separately. You've just changed the meaning of what you're saying into something else. So this means that. A whole block of stuff means a different block of stuff. So, flies at midnight means attack at noon or
now,
something
again,
like that.
These sorts of codes, unlike ciphers, well, not like ciphers, but in terms of how they can be broken, are broken in much the same manner. You can look at statistical things. You might correlate me saying the cock boat launches at midnight. Suppose I say that every time we do a show. You could figure out, the cock boat at midnight means they put a show up.
Yep.
Now, a more secure one would be a one-time use code, like 1 if by land, 2 if by sea. Sure, you could figure out what it meant post hoc, after the fact, but when it was used and no one could figure it out right away.
As long as you don't use it again, you're okay.
Now remember that concept is very critical later.
Mm-hmm.
Now, beyond all that, they kind of moved on to more technological solutions where, remember in World War II, you might have heard about Enigma. But there was this whole idea where you could encrypt, instead of having one way, add 4 to every letter, subtract 3 from every letter, switch them around in a set way. What if the number of letters you went in any given direction changed with every letter? So the first letter, you add 3 to it. The second letter, you subtract 3. The third letter, you add 4. The second letter, you add 5. The fourth letter, you don't change.
Now that's, it's not impossible to figure that out because what we did, but it is pretty damn hard.
Yep, and basically the more complicated you make it, the harder it is. Of course, it was mostly hard because we didn't have computers back then. And in fact, some of the first computers in the world were designed specifically to break this kind of encryption.
In fact, the things that made this encryption, like people didn't do this encryption by hand. They had these mechanical Enigma machines that were like typewriters, and you would type and the encrypted text would come out on the paper.
Yep, now basically this was just security through obscurity. It doesn't matter what the machine actually was. To someone like me, or like the Allies in World War II who were trying to break this code, it didn't matter if it was an Enigma machine or a bunch of slaves pulling cards through loops. I'm not sure what I meant by cards through loops.
Or transistors.
Yes, because it all comes down to you have a black box, which in technical or geek speak is a device where you don't know what's in it, but you know the inputs and you know the outputs.
Yep.
Or maybe you only know the outputs. But the fact remains, it's a black box, and while you don't know how it works inside, there are ways to figure out what the end result of the transformations inside it are. And you can come up with a working model where it might not be the same thing. I might decode it and make this totally different machine that in the end works in the same way. In that if I put the same input into my machine or the Enigma, the same output comes out.
Yep. If you have let's say you have a box and it has 3 buttons and 3 light bulbs. You push, and you can push any combination of buttons and then see what light bulbs turn on. Now, of course, if you open up the box and you see the wiring inside, you know exactly what light bulbs are going to light up when you push which buttons. It's obvious. You see it right there. But if the box is locked and there's no way to see what's inside, you just keep pushing buttons and see what lights light up until you figure the whole thing out.
Now, everything we've talked about thus far, old-style encryption, is mostly useless and is not used by anyone serious anymore because there are so many ways to break it that it doesn't matter. You can increase the complexity to increase the amount of time it takes to break it, but it's generally a linear relationship. You can't make it so complex that a computer couldn't figure it out without making the code so complex that it would take longer for you to encode it than it would be for you to use it.
Yeah, a lot of the problems is that, people have computers. So if a code is simple enough that someone can figure it out, it's got to be really complex to make it impossible for a computer to figure it out, or at least impossible for a computer to figure it out in a reasonable amount of time. I mean, if a computer could figure it out in, say, 500 years, it's effectively impossible to figure it out. It doesn't really matter even that it's technically feasible for them to get the right answer.
Yeah, the thing is, though, not to get into the details, but information theory and modern analysis of these kinds of codes basically proves that it is impossible to make these codes secure. There's no amount of complexity that will make them usefully secure.
Yep.
Now, Scott is going to talk a bit about the modern way of encrypting things, which, to boil it down very, very broadly, involves math.
Yes, there is much math. That is the things computers do, is they do math. And thus, you need to use this math to encrypt things in a good way.
Yes.
Well, the first thing you can do is you can use a symmetric key. Now, a symmetric key isn't that popular, but it does have its uses. A symmetric key basically is where I have a key. The key is some number. It's a number. And there's some algorithm which takes that number and applies it to some data and turns that data into the ciphertext, which is all encrypted.
Now, see, we've been talking about encrypting letters. In modern computers, we basically just encrypt bit streams or bytes or ones and zeros, but the principles are the same.
Yep, we take a number, which is a big stream of ones and zeros. We take a bunch of stuff that's a bunch of ones and zeros, apply one to the other, we get another set of ones and zeros, and then we can reverse it using the same key. So one key does the encrypting and the decrypting. And all I have to do is, if it's a complicated enough key that it can encrypt really well, I give that key to anyone else who I want to be able to encrypt and decrypt data with. And now anyone who doesn't have that key can encrypt and decrypt the text, and no one else can really understand what we're doing as long as it's complicated enough. If it's like a 128-bit symmetric key, it's going to take people basically forever. They'll be dead by the time they figure out what we said. I'll be dead by the time they figure out what we said.
Yep, and with these sorts of keys, unlike the other ones where, if you make it more complex, it's still not much more difficult to break. With this sort of encryption, as you add bits and you make it more complex, the relationship between how complex you make it and how long it will take, even in optimal cases, to brute force break it, increases at such a rate that it's effectively unbreakable.
Yeah, even if you had supercomputers working day and night, I mean, sure, you might be able to break one person when you were an old man. Maybe, if you got lucky. Guess what? If there are hundreds of thousands of people using this encryption, give up now. You can't make computers fast enough.
Now, granted, here's a nice, interesting bit. The reason these are so secure has to do with the fact that the math behind them and the math they use to set this up is the kind of math that is very expensive for computers to deal with. It's not math that can be done quickly or simply.
Yeah, like a lot of it involves using very large prime numbers. Well, it's easy to just pick a large prime number. There's one. But imagine if you had to figure out big prime numbers. It could be any giant prime number, huge. You have to go through all of them. It's hard enough for a computer to figure out the next prime number. Now you're basically guessing, and they're real big, so there's like millions upon millions of choices. It's like, oh, fuck me.
Yep.
It really sucks.
It basically comes down to the fact that as far as we've been able to figure out by information theory, physics, computing, and the world, there is no easy way to do the math that we're looking at here. So even if computers get faster and faster, even if computers get 1,000 times faster, it's still very difficult to break these codes.
Yep. All right, now.
Now, the interesting part here, just real quick, is that it's possible because there were old kinds of codes that people thought were very secure, and then new kinds of math were figured out that basically made them useless. It is possible that someone could figure out a way to use modern computers to break these sorts of problems quicker. However, it's very unlikely.
Yeah, you'd have to invent a new math, basically.
The interesting thing
That
is
assumes there is a new math, and I think we figured out most of the maths.
in theory, quantum computers could do this sort of thing trivially. This has not been shown in practice yet, but there's a lot of theory that if you made a certain kind of quantum computer, it could do these factorizations and these maths effectively immediately and break this sort of code so trivially that the code effectively doesn't exist. But that is beyond anything that's going to happen in the next many years.
And that's why people keep talking about quantum encryption, because theoretically, a quantum encryption, in the same kind of theory that says a quantum computer can break modern encryption immediately, the same kind of theories say that if you used a quantum computer to encrypt something, it would be absolutely 100% unbreakable ever.
Yes, none of this has been proven. It's also very complex. I
don't understand it at all.
I understand it on about the level I just explained.
Yeah, I understand what I just said. All right, now, I just talked about a symmetric key. I have a key. The key is used to encrypt and decrypt, and I give the key to anyone else I want to be able to read or write messages in the code, right?
Now, pros of this message, this idea, very simple, very easy to do, very secure.
The problem is, I have to give the key to people. I mean, if I write the key, how am I going to give this key to Rim? All right, maybe I'll write it down on a piece of paper and give it to him.
All right, that's a pain in the ass, because now you have to physically meet me, which would give up all sorts of information if people are actually trying to read, learn stuff about us. There's the chance that I might fuck it up when I'm trying to type it back in.
Yep, maybe I'll give it to him in a file on a thumb drive. Well, what if someone gets the thumb drive?
Or what if someone hacks your computer while you're giving it to me and looks in your RAM or looks in something and finds it?
Yeah, it's really troublesome. What if, Rim is on the other side of the world and I want to send him a secret message? Well, if I send him the key over the internet, someone might see it while it's on its way over to Rim, and if they see that, then it doesn't matter how big that key was, because now all the encrypted stuff I'm going to send next is going to be able to be decrypted by them easily.
Now, the awesome answer to that is, well, why don't you just encrypt the key? And I think you see why that doesn't work.
They'll just get the key to the key and such. It doesn't make it more secure encrypting it more times.
Yes. In fact, just remember that in general with modern encryption. If you have encrypted something, if you encrypt it again, it does not increase the difficulty of decrypting it for reasons of math that I'm not going to bother explaining.
It's like zipping a zip file. It doesn't make it any smaller.
In fact, it can make it bigger or less secure in some situations.
Yes. Now, what do we do about this problem? There is a solution.
It's a very widely used solution.
In fact, you probably use it all the time. It is called asymmetric key encryption. Instead of having one key, we have two keys. One key is the public key, and one key is the private key. Now, as the names imply, the public key is public. Anyone in the world can look at this key. Have the key all you want. Do whatever you want. I don't give a shit. And the private key, you keep that close to your chest and you don't let anyone see it ever. Now, how does this work with the two keys? I mean, if one person can see this key that is over around the whole world, doesn't that kind of ruin everything? No.
The answer in a word, well, not in a word, but in a short explanation, is irreversible math, where you have some sort of math thing whereby you can take one set of data and create or derive another set of data, but yet you can't use the end result and go back. You can't look at the data I've made and figure out the data it came from.
Right. Look at this. Let's say, modulus, remainder, right? 3 divided by 2, the remainder is 1. The modulus of 3 mod 2 is 1, right?
Yes.
If I give you the number 1, you have no idea if I did 3 mod 2, 100 mod 99, 99 mod 88, 2 mod 1. Well, I guess not 2 mod 1, but I got one wrong. But you see, the point is that you do some math on a number, and the resulting number, there's no way to go backwards. There's only one direction. The numbers go in one way, and you can never go back to get the original number again.
So on one hand, you're now free to give this new number to anyone you want, and at the other hand, this number is still derived from your more important private number.
Yes, if they had the private number, which is a very large, complicated prime number, you'd be fucked. Instead, they have this other number, and that number is related to your number, so the keys match. However, there is no way for them to figure out your private number from the public number. Now, here's why this is useful. The public number, the number that everyone in the world knows, can only be used to encrypt. So, if Rim wants to send me a message encrypted, I have a private key and a public key. I give Rim my public key, because anyone in the world can see that number.
He
Who
can
cares?
email it to me in plain text, blind carbon copying the world and shouting it out as he runs down the street. It doesn't matter.
All that allows people to do is to send me encrypted messages. It has no other useful function. So Rim uses that public key and encrypts a message. Now, Rim can't even decrypt that message. He has to give it to me. And I have the private key, which is the only way in the world, without lots and lots of computers in 100 years, to decrypt that message. So, obviously, the only problem with this public-private key business is, of course, if the math is wrong, someone's going to bust you open. But the math has been tested quite a bit, and it's pretty hard to break.
Now, the only real drawback of the asymmetric keys is that math-wise, according to professors who know a lot more about math than we do, they're not as secure per bit or per length of key as symmetric ciphers. Due to math we don't understand, it basically comes down to a smaller symmetric key is as secure as a larger asymmetric key.
Yes, that's why when you do like an SSL, you'll do like 128-bit SSL encryption. But when you do like a PGP RSA public-private key thing, you'll do like a 4096-bit encryption.
Yep. The thing is, computers are fast enough to where you don't lose much by using larger keys. The performance differences in most cases are negligible.
Yes, if you have the keys and you're just encrypting and decrypting things and not trying to break someone else's code, it might take a minute, but it really doesn't take long at all, especially if you have a modern computer. Like, if you have a Core Duo, it's going to be like, boop, encrypted, boop, decrypted, no problems.
Yeah. It's also the fact that it comes down to basically asymmetric keys are so much more useful than any other kind of encryption out there.
Yes.
That there's no reason to, unless you're a crazy paranoid nut, to try to use anything else or to use some sort of gigantic monster key.
Yes. Now, the problem, of course, with this public-private key business is it only goes one way. I have the private key, which can decrypt, and the whole world has the public key, which can encrypt.
So if you want to talk to people, you have to have the public key of every person you want to talk to.
Right. So it got to go both ways. So if I have a private key and everyone else has a public key, everyone can send me messages, but I can't send anyone else any messages. So other people have to have their own private keys, and they have to give me their public keys. And we're actually, when I send stuff to Rim, it's encrypted differently than when he sends stuff to me. It's encrypted for his public and private key pair when I send it to him, and for my public and private key pair when he sends to me.
Yep. Now, we've talked a lot about all these methods of encryption, and we always point out that they can all be broken. So I'm sure the question that is on at least some of your minds is, well, why is that even a distinction? I mean, is it possible to make an unbreakable encryption? And the answer is not only yes, but a yes that has been known for a very, very long time.
It's actually stupidly easy. I can do it with a pen and a paper right now.
Yes, it turns out that the most secure, and when I say most secure, I mean it's been proven mathematically in information theory that it is 100% secure as long as you do it right.
Yeah, a quantum computer might not even be able to bust it open.
Yes, it's called a one-time pad, and we're going to talk about it mostly because it's very interesting.
Now, what you do with a one-time pad is you take a pad and you just write down numbers on it.
That probably wouldn't work.
No, you need random numbers.
Basically, all you need to use a one-time pad is some source of randomness. It has to be actual randomness. So rolling dice is fine. Flipping a deck of cards and drawing random cards is fine. Flipping bingo chips and pulling them out is fine. Any way of getting actual random numbers. Flipping a coin a million times would work just as well.
Yep, if they're not actually random, then there will, in the long run, be some sort of pattern. And if there's some sort of pattern, then someone can find that pattern eventually and figure it out.
Now, two, you have to generate a sheet or something. It could be a CD, a flash drive, anything that has this stream of random data. You have to have two copies of it. One that you keep and one that you give to the person you're going to be exchanging data with.
And you can't let anyone else get this, or else it's game over.
Yes. Now, the final bits are that, one, you cannot let anyone know your plain text either, because then they could theoretically retroactively mess with you, which, however, while that is a concern, if you follow the final bit of information, that's irrelevant. The final bit of information is, if you ever use any part of your random data, any segment of it, any page, any whatever, you can never, ever, ever, ever use that again, ever. And furthermore, you must destroy it.
Yep. So, you've got this pad of pages, and each page has a bunch of random data on it. Now, you've got a message in English. You take the first letter of that message, and you combine it somehow with the first number on the paper to create the new letter, or the encrypted letter of some sort.
In the old days, they do a mod 26 of, they make sure the numbers were mod 26, and then they just add them to the letter.
Yep. Then you take the second letter, and you take the second number from the piece of paper, and you put down the encrypted letter.
Now, you might say, this sounds a lot like those old classical ciphers that Rim and Scott said were broken. The difference is, there is no deterministic way to find any relation between what was done to one letter and what was done to any other letter.
Yep, you're not doing the same thing to every single letter. You're doing a different thing to each and every letter. And who knows what that thing is? You know, I mean, someone looks at it, there might be mostly S's. Well, if they turn those all into E's, they're not right, because you did something different to each and every letter.
Yep, there is no possible statistical analysis because there is no way to differentiate the data from the random noise that it was added to. Furthermore, say you brute force it, because it's only letters, you could make every possible combination. So like we said before, wouldn't one of the combinations be, we attack at dawn, and all the others are gibberish? No, because the possible combinations include every single possible combination of letters. So, we attack at dawn, we attack at dusk, we attack at pens.
Rim doesn't know what the hell he's talking about.
Blibbity blobbity bloobity blah, a string of cockboats. They're all equally possible.
Yep.
So there is no way on Earth at all with any form of anything to decrypt a one-time pad if it was made properly.
Yep, you use every number on the pad once and only once, and then as soon as you finish a page in the pad, you tear it off and you disintegrate it. Now, the only way to figure out what the message was is the other person with the same exact pad gets the message, and he has the numbers. That's the only way.
And the only reason one-time pads aren't used a lot these days, is with computers especially, is that they're difficult to use properly, partly because people don't understand them, or people think it's stupid to have to throw away the pages, or people don't do it right, people reuse them, people don't generate random data. There's a lot of human problems that cause this to fail.
Yes, this is why we use the public and the private keys mostly, because the one-time pad, while absolutely secure in all ways, is cumbersome.
Yes. Now, granted, it was used a lot during the Cold War. A lot of our spies, a lot of Russia's spies, use one-time pads a lot because, unlike modern encryption with computers, one-time pads can be done trivially with a pad of paper. You don't need any technology, you don't need any special knowledge. All you need to be able to do is add numbers to letters.
Yep. It's pretty simple right there.
And also, despite the fact that it's perfect unless you fuck it up, a lot of data suggests that even when people fucked it up and reused pads, the rate of actually truly decrypting the data was still very, very low, on the order of 1% to 2%.
Yeah, all these rules that we're telling you about burning the piece of paper and never using the same thing twice, you know, if you follow all those things, that's what you need to do to get 100% guaranteed encryption where no one can ever figure it out.
Yeah.
Even if you don't do all of those things perfectly, let's say you screw up a little bit here and there, you know, you forget to burn the paper, you use the same thing twice once, it's still close to impossible to figure it out if you do it close to correctly.
Yep. The big difference is just that with computer encryption, by making it more complex or doing things better, the chance of it not being decrypted goes up from 98 to 99%.
Which is a big difference. That's like a difference of an extra million years of computing.
Yep. But the difference between any non-100% and 100% is effectively infinite, because now the time to decrypt is forever.
Yep. They will never figure it out, even with a quantum computer.
Because as computers increase, one problem with modern encryption is that if you encrypt something now, there's no way people will decode it now. But 1,000 years from now, it may be trivial to decrypt it. With a one-time pad, 1 billion years could go by, and gods themselves, would they exist, could not decrypt your message unless they read your mind.
Yep, or they could go back into the past and watch
crap.
you write the message.
Time travel fucks it up.
It does. Time travel fucks up a lot of things.
Yeah, good thing there's no time travel.
Or like if there was some way to deterministically figure out based on the current, I guess if you could look at the current configuration of all the matter and energy in the universe, and from that figure out any previous configuration of matter and energy in the universe at any time, then all encryption would be useless.
Now, what you've just proposed is a very eloquent way of saying obtaining omniscience.
Yes.
Hence,
Yes.
now encryption has a lot of other uses. We're not going to go into a lot of detail here, but one thing you can do, and there's a lot of reasons this is important, is you can use things like PGP, which is a very common way of encrypting things, to not only protect data, make sure no one else can read it, but to be able to prove mathematically that you're the one who made that data.
And that the data has not changed.
Yes, preventing something called a man-in-the-middle attack.
Well, basically what you do is, let's say I have a document, and I want to send this document to some people on the internet. And I both want to prove that I was the person who wrote this document. And, because someone else out there might take the document, change the words around, and then send it out and pretend that I said it. I want to prove that, the copy of the document that you have in your hands is the one that I have written. So what do? We take the key, the similar key to the ones you were talking about before. We apply it to the document, and we don't encrypt the document. All the text is left alone, but we put a signature at the bottom. It's just a stream of random stuff at the bottom. And that stream of random stuff is a combination of my key and the data that's on the page. Now, let's say I use my private key to generate this signature. You can use your public key to verify that, yes, that signature is put there by the person with the private key, and it was on this data above. It goes in the backwards way.
I find it interesting that a lot of people in the world right now, and a lot of politicians, people really don't trust electronic signatures. And I don't trust a computer. I don't trust signing things by typing a password or clicking or whatever. And yet, the way we trust is to take some sort of implement and scribble something on a piece of paper, despite the fact that with an electronic signature, you can mathematically verify that it's 99.9% likely that the person in question actually signed it.
Yep.
Yet, as much as people like to believe it's true, it's actually false that handwriting analysis works.
Handwriting is crap.
Handwriting analysis is not a science.
It's worse than, doing every letter plus one.
Handwriting analysis is pretty much total garbage.
Yeah. So check it out. Let's say I write a note. The note is hello. I take my private key and I sign that note. And at the bottom is a signature. That's it looks like a weird key. Rim gets the note. It says hello and there's a signature at the bottom. He takes my public key and he checks it. And it says, yes, Scott wrote this note. Scott is the person. And it says, yes, the note is hello. That is the note that Scott wrote and has not been changed.
Yep. Now, this is very important for a lot of reasons, and you can even use this on your own. Let's say, here's a good example of how you could use this in your daily life. Let's say you're an artist, and you draw awesome pictures, and you put them on the internet. Well, how about every time you make a picture, and it's done, you encrypt it and sign it? Because remember, signing it also proves when it was signed. Time is built into this thing. So now let's say some moron steals your art and says, oh, I drew this. You can't prove it. Look, I've got the picture too. And you could argue, yeah, you got it from my website, whatever, but there's no way to prove that, except if you've got this signed, encrypted copy of the original and the date that it was made. It is now mathematically proven that you created this work of art at least as of the date you signed it.
Now, you want to hear a real-world use of this sort of signing that goes on every day? It's pretty cool. All right, so if you are a person, let's say you make a piece of software and you distribute it on the internet, an exe file, and people download it from your website and use it, right? Well, how do they know that someone didn't hack into your server, replace that exe file with some virus, and now they're downloading a virus? How do they know? Let's say someone else downloads your exe and puts it up on their website and says, yeah, I'm mirroring his file. Well, how do you know that the file they're mirroring or pretending to mirror isn't actually a virus? How do they know that it's the software that you made originally? Well, you have a signature or some sort of checksum or hash or some sort of thing in this manner of the signing.
Something that concisely shows at least that the data hasn't changed, or that it is 99% likely that the data hasn't changed. I mean, there are chances that you could find something that satisfies the key. Some sort, like maybe you could change one letter and you found such a way to where if you changed it, the key still works.
That's just as hard as breaking the encryption.
Yes,
and all
the odds of
stuff.
that are astronomical. In fact, when one is discovered, it's a huge deal and it's usually all over the internet.
Yes. So if you haven't noticed, if you're not a Linux user, Linux sort of has these, most distributions have sort of centralized repository of software. You get all your software from one big server in the sky. And they're really worried about someone compromising this server because, well, if you were to put a virus in place of one of the programs on the server, you would infect every user of that Linux distribution pretty quickly. So they sign absolutely every piece of software on that repository, and your computer checks the signatures, whether you know it or not, of every piece of software. And if they don't match up, your computer complains and it won't install the software. And it says, I don't trust that software. It's not signed properly. I can't be sure that that's from the trustworthy people who make the software. I can't be sure that that's the software that they made. I can't be sure it wasn't changed. I'm not doing shit. And it's really helpful.
On that note, I hope that was informative. I plan to eat some more trans fat koalas, play some Wesnoth, and go to bed.
I'm going to beat Hotel Dusk and go to bed.
This has been Geeknights with Rim and Scott. Special thanks to DJ Pretzel for the opening music.
Be sure to visit our website at www.frontrowcrew.com, where you'll find show notes, links, our awesome forum, a link to our Frapper map, and links to all the RSS feeds.
We say feeds plural because Geeknights airs 4 nights a week, covering 4 different brands of geekery. Mondays are science and technology. Tuesdays, we have video games, board games, and RPGs. Wednesdays are anime, manga, comic nights. And Thursdays are the catch-alls for various rants and tomfoolery.
You can send us feedback by email to geeknights@frontrowcrew.com. Or you can send audio feedback via Audio. Just click the link that says Send Me an Audio on the right side of our website.
If you like what you hear, you can catch the last 100 episodes in iTunes or in your favorite podcatcher. For the complete archives, visit the website, which has everything.
Geeknights is distributed under a Creative Commons Attribution Non-Commercial Share-alike 2.5 license. This means you can do whatever you want with it as long as you give us credit, don't make money, and share it in kind. Geeknights is recorded live with no studio and no audience. But unlike those other late shows, it's actually recorded at night.